A at 137, another possible trade chip. Zach Wheeler, he's certainly been talked about. Jack says, would the Rays have to give up Franco? I'm going to tell you something. They're not giving up Franco for the president. They're just not. Franco's staying in Tampa. They might give up something, but it won't be Wander Franco, especially not for Abreu. I don't see that at all. Andrew Vaughn, that's right, that's the name. Andrew Vaughn may be the everyday first baseman in Chicago, but they've got other people even at lower levels than that who can also play the position. You got to think they're trading him, and Tampa, Sans, Wander Franco, I'm sure are in the discussion. How about these pitchers I just talked about, Robbie Ray and Zach Wheeler? Where's Wheeler going to go? Yankees are in the discussion. Yankees are in discussion for Ray. You know, they traded for Ray not that long ago. Yeah. I mean, Ray was involved in a trade with the Yankees. Let me see if I can find this for you. Arizona, they're 46-45. They have a realistic hope in this wide-open, free-for-all National League wild card, no doubt about it. They're just a game and a half out. They don't look necessarily like surefire sellers, but they could be. And the Diamondbacks in Robbie Ray have a leader in strikeouts we just talked about. The Yankees, according to Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic, quoting, historically have liked, end of quote, the left-hander. He's 27 years old. If you remember, as I was saying, he was a piece in a trade featuring the Yankees earlier in his career. In 2014, the Diamondbacks acquired Ray from the Tigers. The Yankees got shortstop Didi Gregorius from the D-backs, and the Tigers picked up righty Shane Green from New York. Does anybody remember that trade back in December of 14? Late December back in 14. That sounds like a song that the Four Seasons might have come up with. But anyway, you had a 3-team deal in December of 14 involving Ray, Didi Gregorius, and Shane Green. Didi's a free agent at the end of the year. Shane Green is certainly a trade chip, trade player, and Robbie Ray as well. So, just a thought. Now, there's that guy saying they have positional players, Tampa. Don't know if the Rays would deal Brandon McKay. I don't see them dealing McKay or Wander Franco. I think anybody else is fair game. What about, I'm just throwing this out there, what about the slugging first baseman Nate Lowe? Just throwing that out there. What about Brandon Lau? I mean, these are pieces that can be replaced right now. And Nate Lowe, power at first base, Detroit would get a first baseman back a lot younger and a lot cheaper. Not Detroit, Chicago, excuse me. And they may be interested in also looking at Brandon Lau. Just a thought. How about Trevor Bauer? Where else might he go? You know, they got Kluber coming back in the second half. They've got Danny Salazar expected to join rotation in the second half. They're going to have pitching. They need a bat. We've already talked about this morning dealing with San Diego. Are there other trade partners Cleveland might have in mind? Are there any trade partners in the National League they might have in mind? Would they deal with geographical rival Cincinnati? Cincinnati has some prospects, some batting prospects, some major league ready prospects. Can you imagine Trevor Bauer, hold on a minute, Trevor Bauer going to the Reds and the Reds getting back a bat? I mean, the Indians getting back a bat. The Indians getting an outfielder from Cincinnati for Trevor Bauer. Looking at the chat room, Madrigal. I've seen him play a lot at High A Winston-Salem. I've compared him on this show in weeks past to Jose Altuve. He's probably Jose Altuve with a little less power. He's going to steal a lot of bases. He's going to hit a high average. He hardly ever strikes out. Hardly ever. Madrigal. He's going to be a White Sox, I think, for a ways to come. So we'll see. I want to talk about a moment. I'm enjoying this, okay? I'm on a roll, right? All-Star game is tonight. Who's ready for the All-Star game? I mean, it's always exciting, and we got to get ready for that, and interesting to see how the teams will play. I'm going to give you their lineups in just a second. But here we go. The American League, George Springer is leading off, playing right field for the American League All-Star team. DJ LeMahieu batting second, playing second base. Mike Trout batting third, playing center field. Carlos Santana will be batting cleanup, playing first base. J.D. Martinez will be the DH. Alex Bregman batting sixth and playing third. Gary Sanchez batting seventh and catching. Michael Brantley batting eighth and playing left field. And Jorge Polanco batting ninth, playing shortstop. Verlander is the starting pitcher tonight for the American League. And the National League leads off with Christian Yelich in left field. Javier Baez at shortstop. Freddie Freeman batting third at first base. Cody Bellinger in right field batting cleanup. Arenado's in the fifth slot playing third. Josh Bell DHing. Wilson Contreras batting seventh and catching. Ketel Marte batting eighth, playing second base. And batting ninth, Ronald Acuna Jr. playing center field. You imagine a team with Ronald Acuna Jr. batting ninth. Are you kidding me? This is going to be great tonight, this All-Star game. Ryu pitching for the National League starting. He's the first Korean to ever start an All-Star game. And the All-Star game will first pitch tonight at 7:30 on Fox. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm interested in watching that one tonight. And, what a week it's been for baseball. We had the Futures game. I want to talk about that just for a few moments and talk about some players in that Futures game. A lot of you guys have stuck with me through technical difficulties and everything else this morning, and I so appreciate it. But the Futures game, always a delight, always interesting to see and watch and predict who's going to be, coming up at a later date in these Futures games for major league teams, both at the, major league level, how they'll progress throughout the rest of the year. I don't know if you watched the game or not, but it was quite the game. It really was.
2-2. And over the weekend, I was fortunate that Team USA, the college players who are, for the most part, 90% or more are sophomores, they will be rising juniors and eligible for the 2020 Major League Draft. They were in Durham playing the Cuban national team over the weekend, so I got to watch them as well. I want to talk about some of the players and go through, at least at the Futures game, the players on the teams and what we can expect possibly in the second half from some of these guys. Okay, so looking at the box score for the National League Futures team, I'll just go down to this. Pache, the center fielder, he's with Atlanta. He went 0 for 4, Christian Pache, and I think you can probably look for him next year, not this year. Carter Kieboom went 1 for 2. And, he was up earlier for Washington and just fell smack on his face. But he's been performing really well for the Nationals. I'm going to look for Kieboom to come up in the second half. Now, a lot of that may have to depend on when or what Washington does with their roster. Kieboom opened the fourth inning last night with the first hit of the game for either side. It was a line drive at the middle against Manning, the Detroit Tiger prospect, and he scored the game's first run on Trammell, Cincinnati prospect's RBI. But he's ready. There's really nothing left for him to prove at AAA. What's noteworthy, I think, about Carter Kieboom and his potential for a call-up is this past week, I did some research on him. He had a 3 for 5 game with a home run. He's had big offensive performances, hitting .321 through 65 games for Fresno. But earlier this week, or early last week, he was playing third base for only the third time this season. So if you add third base to his repertoire, that means he could be third base, shortstop, second base eligible, which can only help him, either one, get to the majors quicker in 2019, but certainly he could be a backup plan if the club can't re-sign pending free agent Anthony Rendon in the offseason. So I'm still thinking he's going to be called up in the second half. How soon? I think we look at July 31st. I told you a month ago, don't count the Nationals out. Look and see where they are in the standings on July 4th. Well, on July 4th, they are certainly in competition for a wild card, if not the National League East. Kaboom probably at this point called up if an injury would ensue. Dozier's been hitting the ball better lately. Dozier homered yesterday. He now is hitting 269 over his last 8 games. He's at 233 on the season with 14 homers and 33 RBIs. So as long as Dozier continues to hit, I don't look for Kaboom to get that call. But let an injury happen, or if they do go into trade mode over the next few weeks, because if they were to fall out of the race, then certainly Kaboom is next up on the list to get the call. Going through the rest of the box score for the National League Futures, Bart came in late in the game, catching 2 at-bats, no hits. Diaz batted third, played second base, went 0 for 3. Baum, the Philly prospect, went 1 for 4 last night. Trammell, I told you, the Cincinnati Red outfield prospect, went 1 for 2, drove in a run. Craig started at first base for the Pirates. Gorman came in, St. Louis prospect. Carlson in right field went 1 for 2. Varsho, DH, went 0 for 3. Amaya, the Cubs prospecting catcher, started at catcher, did not get a hit. And Lux came in, the Dodger prospect, and did not get a hit. So only 5 hits on the night for the National League Futures. For the American League Futures, Wander Franco, the number 1 prospect, I guess you'd say, in all of baseball. The Tampa Bay product went 1 for 2. Lewis came in. The Minnesota Twin prospect went 1 for 2. Nick Madrigal started at second base. Did not get a hit. Mateo, who's a Yankee farmhand, traded to Oakland. He's at AAA, went 1 for 2. Luis Robert, 0 for 4. Joe Adele, 1 for 2. Kelenic, 0 for 3. White, the first baseman, started the game, 0 for 1. And Sam Huff, who I have talked about on this show as a prospect. He's in the Texas Ranger organization playing this year at a local team for me, which is in Kinston. They're called the Down East Wood Ducks. He went 1 for 2 with 2 RBIs, and he was voted the most valuable player of the Futures game last night. So a local boy, at least from my perspective, he does good, and he's the MVP. Connor Jones, also in the Carolina League, started at third base, did not get a hit. Parades came in 1 for 2. Johnson went 0 for 1. Ryan Duran, the prospect for Boston, very fast, good contact, 1 for 2. Rogers 0 for 1, and Hernandez 0 for 2. So that's the batting box score. Pitching wise, a lot of zeros for the National League and American League. I will say just a few notables. Mackenzie Gore, San Diego Padre prospect, left-handed starting pitcher, pitched a scoreless inning. Kay, the New York Met prospect pitcher, a scoreless inning with a strikeout. For the American League prospects, Garcia, the Yankee prospect, just now promoted from AA to AAA after the Futures game yesterday. Devi Garcia pitched a scoreless inning. Matt Manning for Detroit, he gave up some runs. A third of an inning, gave up 2 runs. But the pitching was outstanding. And I'm just going to go through some of the players on the respective teams, give you sort of an update on how they did. Joe Adele led both teams, reaching base 3 times, walking twice, and singling, scoring a run on Sam Huff's game-tying homer in the bottom of the 7th. And in the 8th inning, if you watch the game, he made a diving catch in right field with a runner on second, which helped keep the National League off the board in a tie game. He did strike out swinging to end the game with a potential winning run on second base, but he played pretty well. And, Joe Adele is one of these guys I could see coming up this year for California for the LA Angels. So keep your eye on Joe Adele. Jorge Mateo for Oakland. He singled in his first at bat.